Chef Pedro Abascal isn't native to the Yucatan Peninsula. In fact, he grew up in Morelia, Michoacan, before working in Mexico City, Barcelona, and Paris. But now, at the Thompson Hotel here in Playa del Carmen, he has fully embraced the culture and cuisine. He took me to a local restaurant, El Faison y Venado. It's a landmark in Playa for traditional Yucatecan food. We ordered some enchilada-like papazules and a cold dish called venison zeke. Okay, una pregunta.
Sí.
¿Unas enchiladas de mole?
Sí.
¿O unos papazules yucatecos? ¿Cuál será?
No,
es
dos,
muy difícil,
los
es
dos.
demasiado difícil.
Los dos.
A mí me encantan estos
Sí.
porque es un sabor único. ¿Es difícil para ustedes conseguir el producto local aquí en el hotel?
Un poco.
Un poco.
Hasta cierto punto podemos conseguir mucho producto local.
Ajá.
Lo mismo, rábanos, cilantro, epazote, chiles cítricos.
¿Pero qué te pasa?
Con esto puedo estar bien.
Okay.
Pero me
Pero
gusta.
sí puedes soñar.
Sí, claro, pero me gusta usar.
En 5 años.
Me gusta usar atún, me gusta usar erizo, me gusta usar res de buena calidad que no hay de este lado. El clima quizá no es el mejor para
unas cosas.
Para algunas cosas. Entonces, hay mucho para jugar.
Sí.
Y creo que tenemos también un área de oportunidad muy buena porque cada vez más personas quieren empezar a involucrarse y a crecer más cosas en unos huertos pequeños o sus jardines.
Esta es una cocina única.
Es una cocina muy auténtica. Es una cocina que los que venimos de otros lados la adoptamos ya como nuestra. Te haces adicto a la cocina yucateca y eso es maravilloso.
Pedro's a young chef that's grown up with this notion of intense creativity and local product. But he also has this incredible respect for traditions in the kitchen, ingredients and techniques. And yet at the same time, he wants to put on top of all of that his love for creativity and finding local purveyors to bring things to the back door of his hotel restaurant. I think this is really the future of the young chef generation. Pedro is passionate about sourcing ingredients in a local, sustainable way. He gets his lamb at a farm in the nearby town of Tizimín. Here, the baby lambs are kept in small pens and given organic feed. And when they're big enough, they live free range on this sprawling ranch, feeding on alfalfa and other wild greens. They also raise goats and a special black, hairless Mexican pig, Puerco Pelon. Now, while they're very cute, I was really interested in seeing how Pedro prepares the lamb at his restaurant. This is that beautiful lamb from Tizimín.
Local, fresh, organic.
Yeah. Pedro started by breaking down the lamb and placing the parts that he was cooking into a large braising pan before seasoning the meat. He squeezed in some juice from a couple of sour oranges, and then he put the squeezed shells of the orange right in the pan. Those rinds are incredibly flavorful. Mexican cinnamon went in next, and then some cacao nibs, large whole leaves of hoja santa, and then garlic. That is a really unusual garlic. That looks like what I would call ajo macho.
The ajo macho.
In the markets, a lot of people tell me they only use it like for medicinal purposes, but it's a garlic.
Exactly. So just some garlic around.
We removed the seeds from some pasilla chilies and then put those chilies into the pan as well.
Then we have some cacao butter.
Now that's interesting. It looks like white chocolate to me. So that's just the fat of the cacao.
Exactly.
Wow, how interesting. I've never cooked with that before.
Then I will use just some sherry vinegar.
Okay.
Just to add more acid and make the lamb a little bit more tender.
Okay, so the next step then is to cook this. You're
Yes.
gonna like braise it in an oven.
Probably 200 Fahrenheit.
Okay.
for 6 hours.
Oh, really? So low temperature,
Low
long
temperature,
time.
long time.
Okay.
Because then we will just start grilling.
Cooking it on the grill.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm anxious to see what this looks like after it's
Yeah.
cooked. Wow, it smells so good. I smell the hoja santa, I smell the chili that's in
Yeah.
there, and I smell
The
that-
orange.
And the orange. But that lamb smell is so sweet.
Yeah.
It's like really sweet lamb. He grilled the lamb shank over a fire made from local sapote wood. Okay, so I see you've got some kind of sauce back there. Is
Yes.
that this from the juices?
Check the pasilla chiles
Yeah.
and some cacao, the cacao nibs, just to reduce it, blend it, and make it a sauce.
So these are plantains, right?
Plantains.
Okay.
Yes.
He scooped that roasted ripe plantain into a blender jar, added some salt, and some more of that cacao butter, and then a bit of Mexican crema. And finally, he blended it all together. That is looking really delicious.
It is nice and crispy now.
Pedro used a knife to remove a small piece of that braised and grilled lamb, but he didn't really need it. The meat was just falling right off the bone. He put some of that blended plantain puree onto a plate, then added a slice of avocado and some fresh herbs. And finally, he poured some of that delicious sauce all around the dish. I think I may just like move over like this so you can.
Well, it's
can
fine.
see me.
I made this for you, so it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I understand is the lightness of the flavor of that lamb, the richness of your sauce, the creaminess of the plantain, which adds obviously a tropical kind of flavor to it, and then all this freshness. It's a really beautifully balanced plate. Thank you so much. Oh my God.
Really.
This is so good. It's so good. When I'm gonna have some people over, one of the first cuts of meat that I think about, especially when it's grilling season, is a leg of lamb. And I like to cook it butterflied. And it's so easy to butterfly. I'm gonna encourage you to do that. If you're not one of those people that wants to tackle it, then ask the butcher to do it. But let me just show you how easy it is. You get the leg of lamb like this, and you could see this joint up here. That's the cut that you're gonna make straight across there. So I'm gonna put my knife right up here. Of course, you'll need to have a sharp knife to do this, and you'll cut straight down to that. That's the bone that you're going to follow around. When you get to the back side, of course, then you're going to have to flip the piece of meat around like that and use your knife to kind of cut around it. And then when you get all the way up underneath there, you can see how that bone is completely freed. Okay, the next thing is to go into this joint here. So just go right in there, and that should allow us then to break that. I'm gonna cut through that to release the bone. And at this point, we've got our boneless leg of lamb, well, except for we've got a lamb shank here, which I'm just gonna cut off. Go straight down, right in line with that spot where we cut the knuckle through right there. The rest of this leg of lamb here is ready to go to the grill, except that I want to make it more even in its thickness. So I'm going to cut right along in here so that I can unroll it like that. I'm going to have an even thickness. Now, what even thickness means is that this is going to cook evenly, and it's going to cook fairly quickly. I'll be able to get the whole leg of lamb to medium rare, which is the temperature that I like to do. It won't take very long, and it'll be very, very reliable. To accompany the lamb, I'm going to make a mojo of fresh green garlic from my garden. I slice the stalk of green garlic very thin, then just warm some olive oil up over medium heat. Put in the sliced garlic, add some salt, and let it just barely simmer for about 20 minutes or so until it's beautifully softened. At that point, I'll add a squeeze of fresh lime juice, some fresh thyme, Mine's lemon thyme. And some sliced epazote. Now, if you can't get epazote, feel free to add just a little bit more fresh thyme. Let all of that simmer together for another 10 minutes or so. Well, we're ready to take the next steps on this meal preparation, and Lainey has volunteered to help me with all of that asparagus.
So I'm gonna get started with this. You can either chop off the woody ends of the asparagus, or what I like to do, bend it. You see there's a natural breaking point and pop it right off.
And while she's doing the asparagus, I'm going to prepare the butterflied lamb leg by putting just a little bit of green garlic mojo over the top of the lamb. Then sprinkling generous amount of salt over the top as well. And next, a good amount of fresh ground pepper. Next, I will flip it over and do the same to the other side. And I've got the grill hot, so it's time to put on the lamb. Now let me tell you how I've got the grill set up. I've got it kind of medium high, and I'm gonna cook this lamb directly over the fire. I'm gonna start it out with the fat cap on the top. Put it right in there. Now it should take someplace around 30 minutes depending on how hot your fire is. And I'll tell you, if you're not real familiar with cooking meat, an instant read thermometer will be your best friend. I would cook it to about 130 degrees, take it off, and let it sit in a warm place for about 10 minutes or so for it to coast to its final doneness and reabsorb a lot of the moisture. That'll take it up to about 135, which is really the perfect temperature for me. I'm gonna close the grill to ensure even cooking. I'll go in and flip it after about 15 minutes.
Now that I've finished snapping off the ends of the asparagus, I'm going to spray them with oil, making sure to turn them so that all of them are coated evenly. Then I'm going to salt them. Now I'm going to take the asparagus over to the grill them for about 5 to 10 minutes until they're crispy and tender, making sure to turn them frequently.
Now I know that grilled asparagus, just with a little squeeze of lime or lemon, would be absolutely delicious. But when you put this pasilla chili crema on it, it makes it like a dish for the most special occasion. So that's what we're gonna do today. And you start making this crema by slicing up a white onion, a medium-sized white onion, and then sauteing it. While that is softening and browning, I'm going to chop up 4 cloves of garlic. The onions are nicely browned and softened now, so in goes the garlic. I'm going to stir that for about a minute until the garlic is really fragrant. Half of this mixture is going to go into a small bowl, and then the other half of it I'm going to put into the blender jar. Now I've scraped everything out of this pan. I'm going to give it just a touch more of the olive oil, and we're going to get it ready to crisp up and saute and toast some pasilla chili. So this is the namesake of the dish. And the pasilla chili is one of the dried chilies. It's long and skinny, wrinkled skin, and it's got this deep, resonant flavor that I just love. First thing you have to do is to take the top off of it. Sometimes it's easier to do that with a knife, and then split it down the side so that you can open it up and get all the seeds. I'm gonna need 3 chilies done that way. I've got the 3 pasilla chilies cleaned. The next step is to cut them into 1/4-inch strips. I'm gonna use my knife and just cut right down, but it'll take some pressure. Then the strips of the pasilla chili will go into the warm oil. If we toast them too much, they'll add bitterness to the dish. You'll notice that they'll sort of puff up and lighten in color. When they've all done that, but they haven't sort of released any smoke yet, you'll know that they're ready. About half of them, again, will go into our onion and garlic mixture, and the other half will go into the blender jar. Now, the blender jar contains the contents of what's going to become the creamy part of this dressing. I've got some Mexican crema. You know, it's a lot like creme fraiche. You could use just heavy cream for this if you wanted to. I'm going to spoon in about 1/2 cup of it. To that, I'm going to give just a little splash of water because it's going to need that. About a tablespoon or so. And then a nice sprinkling of salt will go into it. And then I'm going to put the top on it, and I'm going to blend it as smooth as I can get it. Now the other half of this mixture here is going to be kind of like a little compote. I'm going to give it a splash of balsamic vinegar. You could use red wine vinegar if you happen to have that on hand, but I like the sweetness of the balsamic. It's going to need just a tiny bit of salt in it as well. This is going to become like a little compote that gets sprinkled over the grilled asparagus, drizzled with that beautiful crema. When it's springtime and they start harvesting the rhubarb, most of us think about a strawberry rhubarb pie or a rhubarb crisp. But one of my favorite desserts to do with rhubarb is a rhubarb upside down cake. But sometimes when you cook the rhubarb, it loses a little bit of its color. So I'm going to fortify this with Jamaica. Now, mostly we know Jamaica as this crimson-colored beverage, like a soft drink that they make in Mexico, and it's so beautifully red. It's also tangy, so it's going to give its own flavor to that. So we're going to make a rhubarb syrup, if you will, starting off with 1/2 cup of water. Put that into a small saucepan here and measure in an equal amount of sugar. That would be 1/2 cup of sugar. I'm going to turn the fire on underneath to about a medium. Start swirling that around to dissolve the sugar. And then these are the dried Jamaica flowers. You can find them, well, at a lot of grocery stores, but certainly all the Mexican grocery stores. And I'm going to add those to it. When this comes to a simmer, I'll just swirl the pan around, let it simmer gently for about 10 minutes, and then strain out the Jamaica flowers. Now we're on to making the sour cream cake batter. Measure some flour into a bowl. Add some baking soda, a bit of baking powder, and salt. All of that will be whisked together just to distribute all of the dry ingredients evenly together. And now we're on to the mixer. Half of the butter goes into the mixer and it gets creamed with some sugar. In goes an egg, sour cream, milk, and a dash of vanilla. And lastly, those dry ingredients, added in 3 additions, making sure that they're all blended in before you add the next addition. Now it's time for the rhubarb. I'm going to put non-stick skillet. This is a 10-inch skillet over medium heat. And I'm going to measure in the second half of the butter. To that, I'm going to add some brown sugar. I like to use the dark brown sugar for this particular preparation. That goes into the pan there. While that's melting together, it's time for the rhubarb. I need about 1.5 cups of it, and I want to cut it into about 1/2-inch pieces before I add it to the pan. The smell of the brown sugar with the butter is super delicious. The rhubarb will go into that same skillet. And I'll add a little bit of this Jamaica syrup to reinforce that beautiful color. Once this comes to a simmer, we're going to let it cook for about 5 minutes until the rhubarb is softening. Turn off the heat underneath the fruit mixture. Then I'm going to scrape this sour cream cake batter in over the hot rhubarb mixture, spreading it out to the edges. Then we're going to slide this skillet into a 350-degree oven. It'll take 25 to 30 minutes for it to cook until it's springy right in the center. That's when you'll know it's done. Bring it out, let it sit for 10 minutes to cool, and then it's time to flip it out. You still want the cake to be a little bit warm when you unmold it. Of course, this is the nerve-wracking moment. I'm gonna just hold it very firmly as I flip this whole thing upside down. Just like it's, oh, look at that. That makes me really happy. How beautiful is that? You see how that Jamaica syrup really gives the rhubarb a beautiful red color. This is gonna be a great dessert. I sliced the lamb and shingled those slices around the outside of the platter. Spooned on some of that garlic mojo, and then placed some herby greens in the center. I plated the grilled asparagus, then poured some of that pasilla crema over the top, along with the pasilla chili compote. Now for the skillet cake, I poured some sweetened sour cream over the top and then sprinkled it all with powdered sugar. Welcome everyone. Come to our little lamb roast here. Okay, so this is a white sweet potato, and then of course you know your asparagus.
Asparagus with pasilla cream sauce.
Yes. Okay, and then we have this leg of lamb that was grilled, and it's got green garlic, the first harvest of the garlic in the springtime. Okay, help yourselves,
Yes.
help yourselves.
You're gonna have to put some of that on the plate, right? Or I can help you. I'll hold it.
Yeah.
Let me hold it. Yeah. I can't believe that you almost had this for dinner.
Okay, so I fired up your appetite. Some of my favorite dishes, entertaining tips, and Mexican travel inspirations. Well, now I want to hear what you have to say. Visit us at rickbayless.com/TV for recipes and a whole lot more.